Imagine this: you're sorting through your mail on a quiet evening, expecting bills or a friendly note, when you find an envelope with elegant handwriting addressed to you. Inside, there's a single sentence, cryptic and chilling: "He must be stopped, or I am doomed." Your heart skips a beat. Who wrote this? What do they mean? And why you? This is the kind of mystery that would land straight in the lap of Hercule Poirot, the world's most meticulous detective, whose little grey cells thrive on unraveling secrets. In today's video, we're diving into one of his most gripping cases, Lord Edgware Dies, a tale of betrayal, deception, and a murder that shocks London's elite. So, grab a cozy blanket, hit that like button, and let's step into Poirot's world of elegance and intrigue. It's a crisp spring evening in 1930s London, and the city hums with the glamour of high society. In his impeccably tidy flat at Whitehaven Mansions, Hercule Poirot adjusts his perfectly knotted tie, his moustache gleaming under the soft glow of a chandelier. His friend, Captain Arthur Hastings, lounges in an armchair, flipping through a newspaper filled with tales of theatre stars and aristocratic scandals. The air is calm, filled with the faint scent of Poirot as herbal tisane. But the tranquility is about to be shattered. A knock at the door announces the arrival of a client whose plea will plunge Poirot into a case as dazzling as it is deadly. Welcome to Chapter 1 of Hercule Poirot's breakthrough in The Sinister Lord Edgware Dies, where a desperate woman's request sets the stage for a murder mystery that will test Poirot's genius like never before. The visitor is Lady Jane Edgware, a vision of beauty and fame, known to all as Jane Wilkinson, the celebrated actress whose charm lights up London's West End. She sweeps into Poirot's flat with the confidence of a star, her silk dress rustling, her eyes sparkling with urgency. Hastings, ever susceptible to a pretty face, is instantly smitten, but Poirot's sharp gaze sees beyond her glamour. Jane is here with a problem, and it's no ordinary one. She sits, her hands twisting nervously, and explains her plight. She wants a divorce from her husband, Lord George Edgware, a wealthy but cold-hearted aristocrat known for his iron will and cruel streak. Jane's voice trembles as she describes their marriage, a union marked by control and misery. "He won't let me go, Monsieur Poirot," she says, her eyes wide. "He refuses to divorce me, and I'm trapped. I need your help to persuade him." Let's pause and put ourselves in Jane's shoes. Imagine being stuck in a relationship that stifles you, where every move is watched, every dream crushed. You're desperate for freedom, but the one person who holds the key won't budge. That's Jane's reality, and it's what makes her plea so compelling. She's not just a glamorous actress. She's a woman fighting for her future. She tells Poirot that Lord Edgware is a man of contradictions, charming in public, ruthless in private. His Mayfair mansion is a gilded cage, filled with priceless art and silent resentment. Jane wants to marry again to a man who promises her love and a new life, but Edgware's refusal blocks her path. She's heard of Poirot's knack for solving impossible problems, and she's banking on his little grey cells to change her husband's mind. Poirot listens intently, his head tilted, his fingers steepled. He's intrigued, not just by Jane's beauty, though Hastings is clearly charmed, but by the challenge. Persuading a stubborn lord to grant a divorce isn't his usual case of theft or blackmail, but something in Jane's story piques his curiosity. She mentions Edgware's strange behavior, lately secretive meetings, late-night visitors, and a temper that's grown sharper. "He's not himself," she says, "and I'm afraid of what he might do." Hastings, ever the romantic, wonders if Jane's exaggerating. But Poirot's instincts tell him there's more to this than a marital spat. "Madame," he says, his voice smooth as velvet, "I will speak to Lord Edgware, but I must warn you, Hercule Poirot does not fail, but he also sees what others do not. To give you a sense of the stakes, let's dive into the world of 1930s London high society. Picture grand theatres packed with glittering audiences, where actresses like Jane Wilkinson are idols, their every move splashed across gossip columns. Lord Edgware, a baron with old money and older grudges, is a fixture in this world, his name synonymous with power. But beneath the polish lies a darker side rumours of his controlling nature, his disdain for those beneath him, and whispers of enemies made in business and pleasure. Jane's request seems simple: convince Edgware to agree to a divorce. But Poirot senses undercurrents: jealousy, betrayal, perhaps even danger. For us, it's like watching a drama unfold where every smile hides a secret, and every conversation could be a clue. Poirot agrees to take the case, promising to visit Lord Edgware the next day. He asks Jane for details: who might influence her husband, what his habits are, and whether he's made enemies. Jane hesitates, her fingers tightening on her purse. He has many who dislike him, she admits, but none who dare cross him. She mentions his secretary, the quiet but loyal Ronald Marsh, and his daughter, Geraldine, who despises Jane for taking her mother's place. There's also a new butler, Alton, whose odd demeanour has unsettled Jane. Poirot files these names away, his mind already mapping the players in this unfolding drama. Hastings, scribbling notes, can't help but admire Jane's poise. But Poirot's focus is elsewhere. He's thinking of motives, of hidden truths waiting to be uncovered. Why does this matter to us today? Jane's struggle for freedom resonates. In any era, whether it's breaking free from a toxic relationship or fighting for control over your own life, Poirot's approach, methodical yet empathetic, shows us how to tackle problems with clarity and persistence. He's not just a detective, he's a student of human nature, reading the unspoken in Jane's nervous glances and practiced smiles. This chapter sets up a mystery that's as much about people as it is about crime. Jane's plea is the spark. But Poirot knows that a man like Lord Edgware doesn't hold power without making enemies or leaving clues, as Jane leaves. Her perfume lingering in the air, Poirot turns to Hastings with a faint smile. "This is no simple matter, mon ami," he says. "There is a shadow behind Lady Edgware's words, and I intend to find it. The stage is set. A glamorous actress, a ruthless lord, and a detective whose little grey cells are already at work. What will Poirot uncover when he confronts Lord Edgware? Will he secure Jane's freedom or stumble into something far more sinister?" Stick around for Chapter 2, where Poirot steps into the lion's den and finds a surprise that changes everything. If you're loving this dive into Poirot's world, give this video a thumbs up, hit subscribe, and let's keep unraveling this mystery together. The morning sun glints off the polished brass of London's Mayfair, where grand mansions stand like sentinels of wealth and power. Hercule Poirot, immaculate in his tailored suit and gleaming patent leather shoes, steps out of a hansom cab, his moustache perfectly symmetrical, his eyes sharp with anticipation. Captain Hastings trails behind, his curiosity tinged with unease as they approach the imposing residence of Lord George Edgware. The air buzzes with the energy of 1930s London horse-drawn, carriages mingling with sleek motor cars, Society, ladies in furs strolling past. But inside Poirot's mind, the focus is singular. Jane Wilkinson's plea for a divorce and the shadowy undercurrents of her story. Welcome to Chapter 2 of Hercule Poirot's breakthrough in the Sinister Lord Edgware Dies, where Poirot steps into the lion's den to confront Lord Edgware and uncovers a web of tension that hints at something far darker than a marital dispute. If you're hooked on this glamorous mystery, hit that like button and subscribe. Let's dive deeper into the intrigue. Poirot's mission seems straightforward. Persuade Lord Edgware, a wealthy and stubborn aristocrat, to grant his wife, the actress Jane Wilkinson, a divorce. But as he and Hastings climb the marble steps to the Edgware mansion, Poirot's instincts are already tingling. Jane's description of her husband, man of charm in public but cruelty in private, suggests a complex character, one who wields power like a weapon. The mansion itself is a fortress of opulence, towering columns, stained glass windows, and a heavy oak door that creaks open to reveal Alton, the butler Jane mentioned, his eyes darting nervously as he ushers them inside. The foyer is a cathedral of wealth, crystal chandeliers, Persian rugs, and portraits of stern-faced ancestors staring down. Hastings whispers, "This place feels like a museum," but Poirot's silence speaks volumes. He's observing everything: the butler's stiff posture, the faint scent of cigar smoke, the distant sound of a woman's voice raised in anger. Lord Edgware receives them in his study, a room lined with leather-bound books and heavy mahogany furniture. He's a tall, lean man in his 50s, with a hawk-like face and cold, calculating eyes. His handshake is firm, his smile polite but devoid of warmth. "Monsieur Poirot," he says, his voice smooth as polished stone, "I've heard of your reputation. To what do I owe this visit?" Poirot, ever the gentleman, explains Jane's request with his usual finesse, emphasizing her desire for freedom and a new life. But Edgware's response is startling. He leans back in his chair, a faint smirk playing on his lips, and says, "I've already agreed to the divorce. I wrote to Jane last week, granting her wish. Surely she told you." Hastings blinks, caught off guard, but Poirot's expression remains unreadable. His little grey cells worry. Jane never mentioned this letter. Is she lying, or is Edgware playing a game? Let's pause to put this in perspective for our YouTube audience. Imagine you're hired to fix a problem, say, convincing someone to sign a contract only to find out they've already agreed. Sounds like a win, right? But what if the person who hired you didn't tell you? That's the twist Poirot's facing, and it's a red flag. Jane's omission suggests she's hiding something, or perhaps she never received Edgware's letter. Poirot probes gently, asking to see the letter, but Edgware claims it's with his solicitor. "A formality, Monsieur Poirot," he says, waving a hand dismissively. "Jane will have her freedom." But his tone, laced with disdain, tells Poirot there's more to this story. Edgware's casual agreement doesn't match Jane's desperation, and Poirot senses a deeper motive, perhaps control, revenge, or something even more sinister. To make this relatable, think about a time when someone told you one story, but the facts didn't add up. Maybe a friend swore they'd texted you, but your phone was empty. That's the puzzle Poirot's unraveling. He shifts the conversation, asking about Edgware's life, his business dealings, his family, his enemies. Edgware is guarded but reveals enough. He's a financier with a knack for ruthless investments, estranged from his daughter, Geraldine, who resents his remarriage to Jane, and reliant on his nephew, Ronald Marsh, a charming but detriment young man who serves as his secretary. The butler, Alton, hovers nearby, clearing a tray with exaggerated care, and Poirot notes his unease. There's also a mention of a recent visitor, theatrical producer named Brian Martin, who's been seen with Jane. A friend of my wife's, Edgware says, his voice dripping with scorn. Ambitious, but hardly a threat. Mind is a kaleidoscope of details, each one a potential clue. He observes the study, a locked desk drawer, a half-burned cigar in an ashtray, a photograph of Geraldine glaring from a silver frame. Hastings, ever the optimist, wonders if the case is already solved. Edgware's agreed to the divorce, after all. But Poirot shakes his head. Mon ami, when a solution is too simple, it is often a lie. Lady Edgware did not tell us of this letter, and Lord Edgware's ease is too convenient. He suspects Jane's fear wasn't just about the divorce, but something else, perhaps a threat Edgware holds over her, or a secret she's desperate to keep. The mention of Brian Martin intrigues him. Could the producer be Jane's new love, or a player in a larger scheme? Let's dive into a practical example to show Poirot's method. Imagine you're trying to solve a workplace mystery, say, who's leaking company secrets. You interview the boss, who seems cooperative, but their story feels too neat, and their assistant keeps fidgeting. That's Poirot's situation. He's not just listening to Edgware's words. He's reading his posture, his pauses, the way his eyes flicker when Jane's name is mentioned. He notes Alton's nervousness, wondering if the butler knows more. Then he's letting on. Poirot also recalls Jane's mention of Edgware's secretive meetings and late-night visitors. Could one of them be connected to the divorce letter? Or is Edgware orchestrating a charade to throw Poirot off? As they leave the mansion, Poirot and Hastings walk through Mayfair's bustling streets. The contrast between the city's glamour and the case's darkness stark. Poirot muses aloud. There is a puzzle here, Hastings. Lady Edgware seeks freedom, yet Lord Edgware claims he has granted it. Why, then, her fear? And why her silence about this letter? Hastings suggests Jane might be manipulative, playing the victim to gain sympathy, but Poirot isn't convinced. She is an actress, yes, but fear is not so easily feigned. There is a shadow in this house, and we must find its source. He decides to visit Jane again, to confront her about the letter and probe her story further. He also plans to track down Brian Martin, whose connection to Jane could be a key. Aretha's chapter is a masterclass in reading between the lines. Poirot's not just solving a case, he's peeling back layers of human nature, pride, deception, desperation. It's like navigating a tricky conversation where every word hides a motive. The twist of Edgware's agreement raises the stakes. If the divorce is settled, why is Jane so afraid? Is Edgware lying, or is Jane? And what role do the other players, Geraldine, Ronald, Alton, or Brian Martin, play in this drama? The mansion, with its opulent facade, feels like a stage where everyone's acting a part. And Poirot's job is to spot the truth behind the performance, as they hail a cab back to Whitehaven Mansions. Poirot's mind is already mapping the next steps. He'll need to verify Edgware's letter, investigate Brian Martin's connection, and watch for signs of tension in the Edgware household. The case, which began as a simple plea, is morphing into something far more complex, a tangle of motives and secrets that could lead to danger. This is no longer about a divorce, Hastings, Poirot says, his voice low. This is about power, and power is a dangerous thing. The chapter closes with the cab rattling through London streets, the city's pulse echoing the growing suspense. What's next? In Chapter 3, Poirot confronts Jane about the mysterious letter, but a shocking event at the Edgware mansion turns the case upside down. Will Poirot uncover the truth before it's too late? Keep watching to find out, and if you're loving this, dive into Poirot's world, give this video a thumbs up, hit subscribe, and drop a comment below with your thoughts on Lord Edgware's surprising claim. Let's keep unraveling this mystery together. D. Herring. The London evening wraps the city in a soft glow, its streets alive with the clatter of cabs and the chatter of theatergoers. Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings step out of their cab at Whitehaven Mansions, the weight of their visit to Lord Edgware still heavy on their minds. Poirot's polished shoes click on the pavement, his moustache impeccable, but his eyes are alight with the puzzle that's unfolding. Lord Edgware's claim that he's already agreed to divorce Jane Wilkinson has thrown their case into disarray, contradicting Jane's desperate plea. As they climb the stairs to Poirot's flat, the air feels charged, like the moment before a storm. Welcome to Chapter 3 of Hercule Poirot's breakthrough in the Sinister Lord Edgware Dies, where a shocking event at the Edgware mansion flips the mystery upside down, and Poirot digs deeper into a web of lies. For you, our YouTube audience, get ready for a twist that'll keep you glued. Hit that like button and subscribe, and let's dive into the drama. Back in the cozy elegance of Poirot's flat, the scent of herbal tisane lingers as he settles into his armchair, his fingers steepled in thought. Hastings, ever the eager narrator, recounts their meeting with Lord Edgware, still puzzled by the Baron's easy agreement to the divorce. If he's already said yes, why didn't Jane tell us? Hastings asks, his brow furrowed. Poirot's lips curve into a faint smile, but his eyes are serious. Mon ami, in matters of the heart and power, what is said and what is true are often strangers. Lady Edgware's silence about this letter is a clue in itself. Poirot suspects Jane is either unaware of Edgware's decision or hiding something deeper, perhaps a fear that goes beyond a simple divorce. His little grey cells are buzzing, piecing together the players in this gilded drama. Jane, the glamorous actress; Edgware, the cold aristocrat; Ronald Marsh, the debt-ridden nephew; Geraldine, the resentful daughter; Alton, the nervous butler; and Brian Martin, the theatrical producer tied to Jane. For you, our audience, let's make this relatable. Imagine you're trying to help a friend out of a tough spot, only to find out they've left out a crucial detail like a text they never mentioned. That's where Poirot is, and his next move is to confront Jane Wilkinson about the mysterious letter. He sends a note to her London hotel, requesting an urgent meeting the next morning. But before he can plan further, a sharp knock at the door interrupts them. It's Chief Inspector Japp, the Scotland Yard detective with a gruff manner but a grudging respect for Poirot. Japp's face is grim as he steps inside, hat in hand. "Poirot, you're mixed up with Lord Edgware, aren't you?" he says, his voice low. "Well, brace yourself, he's dead. Found in his study an hour ago, stabbed through the neck." The news hits like a thunderbolt. Hastings gasps, nearly dropping his tea, while Poirot's eyes narrow, his mind racing. "Dead, mon dear, when?" he asks, his voice calm but urgent. Japp explains. Lord Edgware was found by his butler, Alton, slumped over his desk, a letter opener buried in his throat. The time of death is estimated at around 6 p.m., just hours after Poirot and Hastings left the mansion. The household is in chaos. Geraldine is hysterical, Ronald Marsh is nowhere to be found, and Alton claims he saw Jane Wilkinson leaving the house shortly before the body was discovered. Jane's in a right mess, Japp says. She's swearing. She wasn't there, but witnesses saw her or someone who looks like her. Poirot's expression is unreadable, but inside, his little grey cells are on fire. A murder right after their visit. This is no coincidence. Let's break this down for you, our YouTube fans. Picture this. You're working on a puzzle, thinking you've got the pieces figured out, when someone flips the table. That's what Poirot's facing. Jane's plea for a divorce was suspicious enough, but now Edgware's murder and her possible presence at the scene turns this into a full-blown murder mystery. Poirot knows Jane's an actress, capable of playing any part, but is she a killer, or is someone framing her? The timing is too perfect, and Poirot doesn't believe in perfect coincidences. He asks Japp for details. The study was locked from the inside, the letter opener was from Edgware's desk, and there's no sign of forced entry. Alton, the butler, reported hearing raised voices before the murder, but he couldn't identify them. Japp's leaning toward Jane as the prime suspect, but Poirot's not so sure to make this relatable. Think about a time when someone you trusted was accused of something serious, but the story didn't add up. Maybe a friend was blamed for a workplace mistake, but the evidence felt too neat. That's Poirot's mindset. He's looking for the cracks in the narrative. He recalls their meeting with Edgware, the Baron's smug assurance, the locked desk, Drawer, the nervous butler. Could Alton be hiding something? And what about Ronald Marsh, the nephew who's conveniently missing? Poirot also remembers Brian Martin, the producer Jane mentioned, who might have a motive if he's in love with her. Then there's Geraldine, Edgware's daughter, who hated Jane. Each person is a thread in a tangled web, and Poirot's determined to untangle it. Poirot agrees to join Japp at the Edgware mansion to examine the crime scene. With Hastings in tow, the Mayfair streets are quieter now, the evening crowd thinning as they arrive at the mansion. The grandeur is unchanged, but an air of dread hangs over it. Japp leads them to the study, where Edgware's body has been removed, but the scene remains untouched. The desk cluttered with papers, the letter opener missing, and a faint stain of blood on the carpet. Poirot's eyes sweep the room, noting every detail: the half-burned cigar from their earlier visit, now cold in the ashtray, a crumpled note in the waste-bins, and a faint smudge of lipstick on a glass. Curio, Poirot murmurs, bending to inspect the note. It's a fragment, scrawled in haste. Meet me tonight, B. Could be Brian Martin, or someone else entirely. Let's give you a practical example of Poirot's method, our audience. Imagine you're investigating a prank at school. Someone's left a note blaming your friend. You check the scene, finding a pen that matches their handwriting, but also a stray hair that doesn't fit. Poirot's doing the same, only with a murder. The lipstick smudge suggests a woman was here, but Jane's no amateur sheet cover. Her tracks. The note with B points to Brian Martin, but why would he leave it in plain sight? Poirot also notices the locked desk drawer, now slightly ajar. Inside, he finds a draft of the divorce letter Edgware claimed to have sent Jane. Dated a week ago. It's genuine, but Jane's silence about it raises red flags. Did she receive it and lie, or was it never sent? Poirot questions Alton, who's pale and jittery. The butler insists he saw Jane, or a woman in her signature fur coat, leaving the mansion at 5:30 p.m., but his story wavers. He admits the light was dim, and he only saw her from behind. Poirot's mind flashes to Jane's acting skills. She could easily have an impersonator, or someone could be impersonating her. He also learns Ronald Marsh was seen arguing with Edgware earlier that day, demanding money to settle his debts. Geraldine, meanwhile, was at the theatre, her alibi shaky but plausible. Poirot files these details away, knowing every inconsistency is a clue. For you, our viewers, it's like spotting a plot twist in a movie. Each new piece shifts the story, and Poirot's the one to catch it. As they leave the mansion, Japp grumbles about Jane's guilt, but Poirot shakes his head. Nan, my friend, the truth is not so simple. This murder is a performance, and we must find the director. He plans to confront Jane about the letter and track down Brian Martin, whose connection to her hand, possibly the note, could be key. The lipstick, the missing nephew, the nervous butler, all are threads in a tapestry Poirot's determined to unravel. The chapter ends with Poirot and Hastings in a cab, the city's lights blurring past, the weight of murder pressing down. Edgware's death has changed everything, and Poirot knows the killer is still out there, hiding behind a carefully crafted facade. What's next? In Chapter 4, Poirot meets Jane again, but her story raises more questions, and a new clue points to an unexpected suspect. Will Poirot's little grey cells crack the case before the killer strikes again? Keep watching to find out, and if you're loving this dive into Poirot's world, give this video a thumbs up, hit subscribe, and drop a comment below with your theories on who killed Lord Edgware. Let's keep unraveling this mystery together. The London night hums with energy, its theatres aglow and its streets bustling. But inside Hercule Poirot's flat at Whitehaven Mansions, the atmosphere is thick with tension. Poirot sits in his armchair, his fingers steepled, his eyes glinting, as he processes the bombshell of Lord Edgware's murder. Captain Hastings paces, his mind reeling from the news. Edgware stabbed just hours after their visit, with Jane Wilkinson spotted at the scene. The divorce letter Edgware claimed to have sent Jane, and her silence about it adds a layer of deceit to an already murky case. A crumpled note signed B, a smudge of lipstick, and a nervous butler named Alton Swirl in Poirot's thoughts. Each a clue and a puzzle growing more sinister by the hour. Welcome to Chapter 4 of Hercule Poirot's breakthrough in The Sinister Lord Edgware Dies, where Poirot confronts Jane and uncovers a tangle of motives that points to an unexpected suspect. For you, our YouTube audience, buckle up for a twisty ride. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's unravel this mystery together. Poirot's first move is to confront Jane Wilkinson about the divorce letter and her whereabouts during the murder. He and Hastings arrive at her luxurious hotel suite in the heart of London, where the air smells of perfume and ambition. Jane greets them in a silk dressing gown, her smile radiant but her eyes wary. "Monsieur Poirot, I'm so glad you're here," she says, her voice a practiced melody. But when Poirot mentions Edgware's claim that he'd agreed to the divorce and sent her a letter, her face flickers with surprise, or perhaps something else. "A letter? I never got any letter," she insists, her hands twisting in her lap. She claimed she was at a theatre rehearsal the night of the murder, surrounded by actors and crew, nowhere near the Edgware mansion. "Why would I kill him?" she asks, her eyes wide. "I wanted freedom, not his death." Hastings, ever swayed by her charm, wants to believe her. But Poirot's little grey cells are skeptical. Let's break this down for you, our audience. Jane's an actress, a master of performance, so her denial could be genuine or a flawless act. Imagine a friend swearing they weren't at a party where trouble went down, but someone saw them there. That's the bind Poirot's in. He presses Jane about the letter, asking if anyone might have intercepted it, her maid, perhaps, or someone at the theatre. She shakes her head, but her hesitation catches Poirot's eye. He shifts gears, mentioning Brian Martin, the theatrical producer. Edgware referenced. Jane blushes, admitting Brian's her new love, the man she wants to marry. He's been wonderful to me, she says, but he's no killer. He was with me at the rehearsal. Poirot notes her defensiveness, filing it away as a clue. Could Brian have a motive, jealousy, ambition, or something darker? To make this relatable, think about a time when someone's story didn't quite add up, like a co-worker dodging questions about a missed deadline. Poirot's job is to spot those cracks. He asks Jane about her movements the night of the murder, and she describes a hectic rehearsal for her new play, The Fatal Mask. She claims she was on stage until late, with dozens of witnesses. But Poirot, ever observant, notices a detail. Her fur coat, hanging by the door, matches the one Alton saw leaving the mansion. Madame, you are certain you did not visit your husband? He asks, his voice gentle but piercing. Jane's smile falters. I told you, I wasn't there, she snaps, but her fingers tremble. Poirot doesn't press further. He's planted a seed, and he knows she'll reveal more if watched. Back at Whitehaven Mansions, Poirot and Hastings meet with Chief Inspector Japp, who's itching to arrest Jane. Her coat, her motive, her being seen at the scene. It's open and shut, Japp grumbles. But Poirot shakes his head. Nan, my friend, it is too perfect. A murderer does not parade in a recognizable coat unless they wish to be seen or to frame another. He's thinking of the lipstick smudge in Edgware's study, the note signed B, and Ronald Marsh's absence. Could someone be impersonating Jane to throw suspicion her way? Or is Jane playing a deeper game, using her acting skills to orchestrate a murder? Poirot decides to investigate Brian Martin next, suspecting the producer's connection to Jane and the mysterious B holds a key. Poirot and Hastings track Brian Martin to a bustling West End theatre where he's overseeing rehearsals. For The Fatal Mask, Brian's a handsome man in his 30s, with a smooth voice and a knack for charm, but his eyes dart nervously when Poirot mentions Edgware's murder. I barely knew the man, Brian says, wiping sweat from his brow. Jane's the one who dealt with him. He confirms Jane's alibi, saying she was on stage all evening. But Poirot notices inconsistencies. Brian's timeline is vague, and he avoids questions about his own whereabouts. When Poirot asks about the note signed B, Brian flinches. I don't know anything about that, he says, too quickly. Poirot's little grey cells hum. This man is hiding something, perhaps a secret tied to Jane or Edgware's death. For you, our viewers, let's dive into a practical example of Poirot's method. Imagine you're piecing together a mystery. At work, someone's been sabotaging a project, and the clues point to a colleague. You notice they're nervous when asked about a specific meeting, and their story doesn't quite match others. That's what Poirot's doing with Brian. The producer's unease, combined with the B note, suggests he's more involved than he claims. Poirot also recalls the lipstick smudge in the study. Could it be Jane's or someone else's? Planted to mislead. He suspects an impersonator, possibly a woman close to the case, like Geraldine Edgware's daughter, who despised Jane. Or could Ronald Marsh, the missing nephew, be pulling strings to inherit Edgware's fortune? Poirot's next lead is Ronald Marsh, whose absence is increasingly suspicious. Japp reports that Ronald was seen at a gambling club the night of the murder, drowning his debts in whiskey. Ronald's financial troubles give him a motive edge. Death could free up an inheritance, but his disappearance suggests guilt or fear. Poirot visits the club, a smoky den filled with London's less savoury elite. The bartender recalls Ronald arguing with a man about money, mentioning end hours before the murder. Poirot's ears prick up. This could be a clue to Ronald's involvement or a setup. He also learns Geraldine was at the theatre that night, but left early, claiming illness. Her hatred for Jane makes her a suspect, especially if she knew about the divorce letter and wanted to punish both her father and his wife. Let's connect this to our audience. It's like untangling a group chat drama where everyone's pointing fingers, but the real culprit is hiding in plain sight. Poirot's strength is seeing through the noise. Jane's charm, Brian's nerves, Ronald's absence, Geraldine's anger. He returns to the Edgware mansion to re-examine the crime scene, focusing on the locked study. The absence of forced entry suggests the killer was someone Edgware trusted, or someone with access. Alton, the butler, is questioned again, and his story cracks. He admits hearing a woman's voice in the study, not Jane's, but someone with a similar accent. It sounded like the theatre, Alton stammers, and Poirot's mind flashes to Geraldine, who's been in amateur plays, or even an actress friend of Jane's. The chapter closes with Poirot and Hastings in a cab, the city's lights flickering past as the mystery deepens. Jane's alibi is shaky, Brian's hiding something, Ronald's on the run, and Geraldine's anger could be deadly. The lipstick, the note, and Alton's slip about a woman's voice point to a carefully staged crime, but by whom? This is a performance, Hastings, Poirot says, his voice low, and Hercule Poirot will uncover the director before the curtain falls. The stakes are higher than ever, and the killer is still out there, weaving a web of deception. What's next? In Chapter 5, Poirot digs into Geraldine's alibi and uncovers a surprising link between Brian Martin and the Edgware household. But a new clue threatens to derail his investigation. Will he find the killer before they strike again? Keep watching to find out. And if you're loving this dive into Poirot's world, give this video a thumbs up, hit subscribe, and drop a comment below with your guesses about who killed Lord Edgware. Let's keep unraveling this mystery together. The London morning dawns grey and restless, mirroring the storm brewing in Hercule Poirot's mind as he sips his tisane at Whitehaven Mansions. The murder of Lord Edgware, stabbed in his locked study just hours after agreeing to divorce his wife, Jane Wilkinson, has turned a simple case into a labyrinth of deception. Captain Hastings sits across from him, scribbling notes, his face etched with worry as they sift through the clues. Jane's shaky alibi, the mysterious notes signed B, the smudge of lipstick, and the nervous butler Alton's claim of hearing. A woman's voice, Ronald Marsh, Edgware's detritus nephew, is missing, and Geraldine, his resentful daughter, left the theatre early the night of the murder. A new lead Brian Martin, Jane's lover and a theatrical producer, looms large, his nervous demeanour hinting at secrets. Welcome to Chapter 5 of Hercule Poirot's breakthrough in The Sinister Lord Edgware Dies, where Poirot digs into Geraldine's alibi and uncovers a startling link between Brian Martin and the Edgware household, only to face a clue that threatens to upend everything. For you, our YouTube audience, grab a cuppa and get ready for more twists. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's dive deeper into this sinister mystery. Poirot's little grey cells are in overdrive, piecing together the players in this deadly drama. Jane Wilkinson, the glamorous actress, claims she was at a theatre rehearsal during the murder, but her distinctive fur coat was spotted leaving the Edgware mansion. Brian Martin, her lover, backs her alibi but stumbles over his own timeline, and the note signed "Be found in the study" points to him or someone else. Ronald Marsh's absence and gambling debts make him a suspect, while Geraldine's hatred for Jane and her early exit from the theatre raise red flags. Alton's mention of a woman's voice like the theatre adds another layer. Could it be Geraldine, an actress impersonating Jane, or someone else entirely? Poirot knows the truth lies in the connections between these players, and he's determined to find them. Let's set the scene for you, our viewers. Imagine you're unraveling a mystery at a family reunion. Everyone's got a story, but someone's lying, and the clues are in their glances and half-truths. That's Poirot's challenge. He starts with Geraldine, Edgware's daughter, whose bitterness toward Jane makes her a prime suspect. Poirot and Hastings visit the theatre where Geraldine claimed to be the night of the murder, a small venue hosting an amateur production. The stage manager, a harried man with ink-stained fingers, confirms Geraldine was there but left before the final act, citing a headache. She seemed upset, he adds, muttering about her father. Poirot's ears perk up. Geraldine's anger could have driven her to the mansion, and her theatre background means she could mimic Jane's voice or mannerisms to fool Alton. To make this relatable, think about a time you caught someone in a half-lie, a friend saying they were homesick but posting party photos online. Geraldine's headache feels like such a dodge, and Poirot's not buying it. He asks the stage manager if Geraldine knew Brian Martin, hoping to link her to the B-note. The manager nods, revealing Brian visited the theatre that day, chatting with Geraldine backstage. They seemed chummy, he says, talking about Jane's new play. This connection sends a jolt through Poirot. Brian, Jane's lover, knows Geraldine, Edgware's daughter. Could they be conspiring, perhaps to frame Jane or settle scores with Edgware? Poirot files this away, his mind racing through possibilities. Next, Poirot tracks down Brian Martin at a bustling cafe near Covent Garden, where the producer is nursing a coffee, his eyes bloodshot from a late night. Brian's charm is strained as Poirot questions him about the murder. "I told you, I was with Jane at the rehearsal," he insists, but his hands fidget with a cigarette. Poirot mentions the B-note, watching Brian's face pale. "I didn't write any note," he says, his voice tight. But when Poirot asks about Geraldine, Brian admits to knowing her. They met through Jane's theatre circles. "She's got a grudge against her father," he says, "but that's all I know." Poirot's not convinced Brian's nervousness, and the B suggests he's hiding something. Perhaps a meeting with Edgware or a role in the murder's staging. For you, our audience, let's break down Poirot's method with a practical example. Imagine you're investigating a prank at school. Someone's left a note blaming your friend, but you find out they were hanging out with the victim's rival earlier. That's the link Poirot's chasing with Brian and Geraldine. He suspects Brian might have written the note to arrange a meeting with Edgware, possibly to confront him about Jane's divorce. The lipstick smudge in the study could belong to Jane, Geraldine, or even another woman connected to Brian, like an actress friend. Poirot decides to dig deeper into Brian's movements, asking Chief Inspector Japp to check if anyone saw him. Near the mansion that evening, Japp, ever skeptical of Poirot's theatrics, shares new information. Ronald Marsh has been found, holed up in a seedy East End boarding house. Poirot and Hastings visit, finding Ronald dishevelled and reeking of gin. He admits arguing with Edgware about money, but swears he didn't kill him. I was at the club all night, he says, drowning my sorrows. But his alibi as weak witnesses saw him leave the club around 5 p.m., giving him time to reach the mansion. Ronald's desperation for cash makes him a suspect, but his fear seems genuine. Someone's setting me up, he mutters, glancing at the door. Poirot notices a detail. Ronald's coat pocket holds a theatre ticket stub for the fatal mask. Jane's play, dated the night of the murder. Could Ronald have been at the theatre, not the club, and crossed paths with Jane or Brian? Let's connect this to you, our viewers. It's like piecing together a workplace drama. Someone's been blamed for a mistake, but their story's full of holes, and a random receipt points to a different location. Poirot's strength is spotting these inconsistencies. The ticket stub links Ronald to Jane's world, suggesting he might know more about the murder than he's letting on. Poirot also revisits Alton's story about the woman's voice. The butler's mention of a theatre accent keeps circling back to Jane, Geraldine, or someone in their circle. Poirot hypothesizes an impersonator, perhaps Geraldine dressed as Jane, to enter the mansion unnoticed, or an actress hired by Brian to throw suspicion onto Jane. Then comes a new clue that shakes everything up. Japp arrives with a report from the mansion's housekeeper. A hidden safe in Edgware's study was opened the night of the murder, containing papers now missing. The safe held Edgware's will, which left most of his fortune to Ronald, with a small bequest to Geraldine and nothing for Jane. This gives Ronald a massive motive, but also raises questions. Why kill Edgware if he was already set to inherit? And who took the papers? Poirot suspects the killer wanted something in that safe. Perhaps evidence of Edgware's shady dealings, or a secret that threatened Jane. The lipstick, the B-note, and now the missing papers point to a carefully planned crime, not a spur-of-the-moment stabbing. The chapter closes with Poirot and Hastings back at Whitehaven Mansions, the city's lights twinkling outside as the mystery deepens. Poirot's board is filling with threads. Jane's lies, Brian's nerves, Geraldine's anger, Ronald's debts, and the missing papers. This is a symphony of deception, Hastings Poirot says, his voice low. Each player has a motive, but only one holds the knife. We must find the conductor. The murder is no longer just about Jane's divorce. It's about power, money, and secrets buried in Edgware's world. Poirot plans to shadow Geraldine and investigate the theatre. Further, sensing the truth lies in the performance itself. What's next? In Chapter 6, Poirot uncovers a shocking secret about the missing papers, and a confrontation with Geraldine reveals a hidden agenda. Will he unmask the killer before they slip away? Keep watching to find out, and if you're loving this dive into Poirot's world, give this video a thumbs up, hit subscribe, and drop a comment below with your theories on who's behind the murder. Let's keep unraveling this mystery together. The London fog rolls in, cloaking the city in a ghostly veil, as Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings sit in Poirot's pristine flat at Whitehaven Mansions. The murder of Lord Edgware, stabbed in his locked study with a letter opener, has spun a web of suspects and secrets. Jane Wilkinson, the glamorous actress, claims ignorance of the divorce letter her husband said he sent, and her alibi wavers under scrutiny. Brian Martin, her lover, is nervous and evasive, tied to a mysterious note signed B. Ronald Marsh. Edgware's debt-ridden nephew has a motive tied to a hefty inheritance, while Geraldine, his resentful daughter, left the theatre early the night of the murder. A smudge of lipstick, a missing safe's contents, and the butler Alton's tale of a theatre voice keep Poirot's little grey cells buzzing. Now, a new clue about the safe's missing papers promises to unravel the true thought titan, the noose. Welcome to Chapter 6 of Hercule Poirot's breakthrough in The Sinister Lord Edgware Dies, where Poirot uncovers a shocking secret and a confrontation with Geraldine reveals a hidden agenda. For you, our YouTube audience, get ready. For a plunge into deception, hit that like button, subscribe, and let's chase the truth together. Poirot's morning begins with a visit from Chief Inspector Japp, whose gruff demeanor hides a growing reliance on Poirot's genius. Japp brings news. The missing papers from Edgware's safe weren't just his will, they included letters hinting at blackmail. One letter, partially recovered from a servant's memory, mentioned debts repaid in silence, suggesting Edgware was extorting someone, possibly Jane, Brian, or even Ronald. Poirot's eyes gleam. This is the kind of motive that turns a divorce dispute into murder. Mon ami, he tells Hastings, a man like Edgware does not collect enemies without collecting secrets. These papers are the key. The blackmail angle shifts the case, pointing to someone desperate to keep their past buried. But who, and how does it connect to the lipstick smudge and the B note? Let's break this down for you, our viewers. Imagine you're sorting through a friend's messy breakup, only to find they've been hiding a secret deal that could ruin them. That's what Poirot's tackling, a murder rooted in hidden truths. He decides to focus on Geraldine, whose anger at Jane and early exit from the theatre make her a prime suspect. Poirot and Hastings head to her modest flat near the West End, where she lives apart from her father's opulence. Geraldine greets them with icy politeness, her dark eyes flashing with resentment. "I suppose you're here about Jane," she says, her voice sharp. "She's the reason he's dead, isn't she?" Poirot, ever courteous, asks about her whereabouts the night of the murder. Geraldine repeats her story, leaving the theatre early with a headache, but her hands tremble as she pours tea, betraying her nerves. To make this relatable, think about confronting someone who's clearly hiding something, like a co-worker. Dodging questions about a missed deadline, their fidgeting giving them away. Poirot notices Geraldine's unease and shifts to her relationship with her father. She admits hating Edgware for marrying Jane, a woman she saw as a gold digger. "He was cruel," she says, "but I didn't kill him." When Poirot mentions the missing papers, her eyes widen briefly, then narrow. "I don't know anything about his secrets," she snaps, but Poirot's not convinced. He recalls her connection to Brian Martin, confirmed by the theatre manager, and asks if they discussed Edgware. Geraldine hesitates, then admits Brian approached her about Jane's divorce, hinting that Edgware was trouble for them both. "He wanted my help," she says, "but I refused." This is a bombshell for you, our audience. Brian's link to Geraldine suggests a conspiracy, perhaps to eliminate Edgware and free Janor to frame her. Poirot's mind races. Could Brian and Geraldine have worked together, using the B note to lure Edgware into a trap? The lipstick smudge could be Geraldine's planted to point to Jane. Or is Brian acting alone, using Geraldine's anger to his advantage? Poirot decides to dig into the blackmail letters, asking Japp to search Edgware's solicitor for copies. Meanwhile, he revisits the theatre, hoping to uncover more about Brian's movements and the mysterious woman's voice Alton heard at the theatre. The stage is alive with rehearsals for the fatal mask, Jane's play. Poirot speaks to a young actress, Carlotta Adams, known for her uncanny impersonations, including one of Jane Wilkinson. Carlotta's friendly but guarded, admitting she saw Brian and Jane arguing backstage the day of the murder. They were tense, she says. Something about a letter. Poirot's ears prick up. The divorce letter, perhaps. He asks if Carlotta was at the theatre all evening, and she confirms, but her eyes dart away when he mentions Geraldine. Poirot suspects Carlotta knows more. Her impersonation skills could explain the Jane sighting at the mansion. For you, our viewers, it's like spotting a clue in a group chat. Someone's too quick to agree, hiding their real role. Poirot thanks Carlotta, his mind noting her as a potential player in this deadly performance. Let's dive into a practical example of Poirot's method. Imagine you're investigating a stolen office laptop and you find a witness who's too eager to point fingers. Poirot's doing the same with Carlotta. Her skills and proximity to Brian make her a suspect, perhaps hired to impersonate Jane and enter the mansion. The B note could be Brian's, arranging a meeting with Edgware, while the lipstick smudge might be Carlotta's, left to mislead. Poirot also reconsiders Ronald Marsh, whose theatre ticket stub places him near Jane's world. He asks Jap to track Ronald's movements further, suspecting the nephew might have known about the blackmail papers and wanted them destroyed to protect his inheritance or his own secrets. Jap returns with a lead. Edgware's solicitor confirms. The blackmail letters targeted several people, including a theatrical figure who owed Edgware money. Brian Martin fits the bill, his career teetering on financial ruin. Poirot hypothesizes Brian killed Edgware to stop the blackmail, possibly with Geraldine's help, using Carlotta to frame Jane. But the locked study and Alton's story of a woman's voice complicate things. Poirot revisits the mansion, examining the study again. He finds a hidden panel behind a bookshelf containing a single letter not taken by the killer. It's addressed to Edgware from Carlotta, begging him to keep her secret in exchange for payment. Poirot's heart quickens. Carlotta's involved, but as a victim of blackmail, not just an impersonator. For you, our audience, this is like finding a hidden email that changes the whole story. Someone you thought was a bystander is neck deep in the drama. Carlotta's letter suggests Edgware was extorting her, perhaps over a scandal that could ruin her career. Did she kill him to silence him, or help Brian and Geraldine? The theatre voice Alton heard could be Carlotta's, mimicking Jane to gain entry. Poirot plans to confront Carlotta, but first he needs to verify Brian's and Geraldine's alibis. The chapter ends with Poirot and Hastings in a cab, the city's fog mirroring the murkiness of the case. "We are close, Hastings," Poirot says, his voice steady. But the truth hides in the shadows of ambition and fear. What's next? In Chapter 7, Poirot faces Carlotta, uncovering a secret that ties her to Edgware's blackmail, but a new twist puts Jane back in the spotlight. Will Poirot unmask the killer before they strike again? Keep watching to find out, and if you're loving this dive into Poirot's world, give this video a thumbs up, hit subscribe, and drop a comment below with your guesses about Carlotta's secret. Let's keep unraveling this mystery together. The London dusk paints the sky in hues of amber and grey, but inside Hercule Poirot's orderly flat at Whitehaven Mansions, the atmosphere crackles with tension. The murder of Lord Edgware, stabbed in his locked study, has woven a tapestry of suspects, each with secrets as dark as the fog outside. Jane Wilkinson, the radiant actress, denies receiving the divorce letter her husband claimed to have sent, and her alibi teeters on the edge of doubt. Brian Martin, her lover, is linked to a cryptic note signed B, his nerves betraying hidden truths. Ronald Marsh, Edgware's nephew, is drowning in debts and missing at crucial moments, while Geraldine, his daughter, harbors a grudge against Jane, the butler. Alton's tale of a theatre voice and a smudge of lipstick point to deception. And now, a letter from actress Carlotta Adams, found in a hidden panel, reveals she was blackmailed by Edgware. Welcome to Chapter 7 of Hercule Poirot's breakthrough in The Sinister Lord Edgware Dies, where Poirot confronts Carlotta, uncovering a secret that ties her to the murder, only for a new twist to thrust Jane back into the spotlight. For you, our YouTube audience, brace for a whirlwind of revelations. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's peel back the layers of this sinister mystery. Poirot's little grey cells are working overtime, sorting through a cast of characters, who all seem to be playing parts in a deadly drama. The letter from Carlotta Adams, begging Edgware to keep her secret, suggests she was a victim of his blackmail, possibly over a scandal that could ruin her budding career as an impersonator. Her ability to mimic Jane Wilkinson makes her a prime candidate for the Jane cited leaving the mansion, and the theatre voice Alton heard could be hers. But Poirot wonders, was Carlotta a pawn in someone else's game, or did she wield the letter opener herself? Brian Martin's connection to both Jane and Geraldine, combined with the B note, keeps him in the crosshairs, while Ronald's debts and Geraldine's anger add fuel to the fire. The missing papers from Edgware's safe hinting at blackmail suggest a motive that could implicate any of them. Let's set the stage for you, our viewers. Imagine you're untangling a workplace conspiracy. Everyone's pointing fingers, but a hidden email reveals someone's been hiding a scandal. That's where Poirot stands, and his next move is to confront Carlotta Adams. He and Captain Hastings head to the West End Theatre, where the fatal mask, Jane's play, is in rehearsal. The stage is a flurry of costumes and spotlights, but Carlotta stands out, a petite woman with sharp features and a knack for slipping into any role. She greets Poirot with a cautious smile, her eyes flickering with unease as he mentions Edgware's murder. "I heard about it," she says, her voice steady but her hands clutching a script. "Terrible business," Poirot, ever polite, asks about her relationship with Edgware. Watching her closely, Carlotta admits knowing him through theatre circles, but claims it was casual. When Poirot reveals the blackmail letter, her composure cracks. "He had something on me," she confesses, her voice barely a whisper. "A mistake from my pastor man, a scandal. He threatened to ruin me unless I paid." She swears she didn't kill him, claiming she was at the theatre all evening, perfecting her Jane Wilkinson impersonation for a comedy sketch. But Poirot's not convinced her skills make her the perfect candidate to impersonate Jane at the mansion. Fooling Alton. "Mademoiselle," he says, his tone gentle but firm, "did you visit Lord Edgware's home that night, perhaps in disguise?" Carlotta's eyes widen, and she shakes her head, but her trembling betrays her. For you, our audience, this is like catching a friend in a lie. They swear they were somewhere else, but their body language screams guilt. Poirot presses Carlotta, asking if Brian Martin or Geraldine encouraged her to act against Edgware. She hesitates, then admits Brian approached her days before the murder, asking about her impersonation skills. "He said it was for a prank," she says, "but I refused. I didn't trust him." This is a bombshell. Brian's involvement suggests he might have planned to frame Jane, using Carlotta as a decoy. Poirot also asks about Geraldine, and Carlotta reveals they spoke briefly about Jane's marriage. She hated her father for choosing Jane over her mother, Carlotta, says she said he deserved to suffer. Poirot's mind races Geraldine's anger, Brian's scheming, and Carlotta's secret form a dangerous triangle. Let's dive into a practical example to show Poirot's method. Imagine you're investigating a school, prank someone's graffitied, the principal's office, and a witness saw your friend nearby. You find a note suggesting they were blackmailed into it. That's what Poirot's doing with Carlotta's letter. Her blackmail makes her vulnerable, but her impersonation skills make her dangerous. The B note could be Brian's, arranging a meeting with Edgware to confront him about the blackmailor to kill him. The lipstick smudge in the study might be Carlotta's, left during an impersonation, or even Geraldine's. Framing Jane, Poirot decides to verify Carlotta's alibi, asking the theatre's stagehand if she left during rehearsal. The stagehand confirms Carlotta was there but slipped out for an hour, claiming a personal errand. This is a game changer for you, our viewers. Carlotta's absence gives her time to reach the mansion, impersonate Jane, and perhaps commit the murder, but a new twist throws everything into chaos. Chief Inspector Japp bursts into the theatre, his face grim. Jane Wilkinson's been attacked, he says. Found unconscious in her hotel room an hour ago, drugged with chloroform. Poirot's eyes narrow. This attack, so soon after Edgware's murder, suggests the killer is tying up loose ends. Jane's alive but groggy, unable to say who attacked her, though a torn scrap of paper in her room reads, "You're next." The handwriting matches the B note, linking the attack to Edgware's death. Poirot's heart quickens. The killer is moving fast, and Jane's survival might be their mistake. To make this relatable, imagine you're solving a mystery at work. Someone sabotaged a project, and just as you're closing in, another colleague is targeted. That's Poirot's race against time. He suspects the killer attacked Jane to silence her, either because she knows too much or to complete the frame-up. Brian Martin's involvement deepens his connection to Carlotta and Geraldine. Plus, the B note makes him a prime suspect. But Ronald Marsh's debts and Geraldine's hatred keep them in play. Poirot revisits the mansion, focusing on the locked study. He notices a detail overlooked, a faint scratch on the window latch, suggesting someone climbed in from outside. This could explain the locked room, pointing to an outsider, someone staging an outside job. Poirot questions Alton again, pressing him about the theatre voice. The butler admits it sounded like Jane, but softer, almost rehearsed. This strengthens the Carlotta theory. She could have mimicked Jane to gain entry, then fled through the window. But the chloroform attack on Jane suggests a second player, someone with access to her hotel. Poirot hypothesizes Brian hired Carlotta to impersonate Jane, killing Edgware to stop his blackmail, then attacked Jane to cover his tracks. Yet Geraldine's absence from the theatre and Ronald's ticket stub keep them in the frame. The chapter ends with Poirot and Hastings in a cab, the city's fog thickening as the case darkens. The killer is bold, Hastings, Poirot says, his voice steady. But Hercule Poirot is bolder. What's next? In Chapter 8, Poirot sets a trap for the killer, using Carlotta as bait. But a revelation about Ronald Marsh shifts the investigation. Will Poirot catch the murderer before they strike again? Keep watching to find out. And if you're loving this dive into Poirot's world, give this video a thumbs up, hit subscribe, and drop a comment below with your theories about who attacked Jane. Let's keep unraveling this mystery together. The London night is alive with the hum of theatre crowds and the clink of glasses in nearby pubs. But inside Hercule Poirot's elegant flat at Whitehaven Mansions, The mood is taut with anticipation. The murder of Lord Edgware, stabbed in his locked study, has spiraled into a maze of deception, with Jane Wilkinson's chloroform attack adding a chilling new layer. Poirot's little grey cells are ablaze, piecing together clues. The B-note, the lipstick smudge, the missing blackmail. Papers and Carlotta Adams' secret. Jane's shaky alibi. Brian Martin's nervous denials. Ronald Marsh's debts. Geraldine's anger. And the butler Alton's theatre voice all point to a carefully staged crime. Carlotta, the actress who can mimic Jane, is a key suspect. But the attack on Jane suggests a killer tying up loose ends. Welcome to Chapter 8 of Hercule Poirot's breakthrough in The Sinister Lord Edgware Dies, where Poirot sets a daring trap using Carlotta as bait, only for a revelation about Ronald Marsh to shift the investigation. For you, our YouTube audience, get ready for a heart-pounding twist. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's step into the spotlight of this mystery. Poirot sits at his desk, his mustache pristine, his eyes scanning a sketch of the Edgware mansion's study, where every detail, the locked door, the scratched window latch, the lipstick smudge, tells a story. Captain Hastings, ever loyal, paces nearby, his mind racing with the latest shock. Jane, found drugged in her hotel room with a note saying, "You're next," is now recovering but terrified. The note's handwriting matches that be found in Edgware's study, linking the murder and the attack. Poirot suspects Carlotta Adams, whose impersonation skills and blackmail letter make her a prime candidate for staging Jane's presence at the mansion. But Brian Martin's connection to Carlotta and Geraldine, plus Ronald's theatre ticket stub, keeps the net wide. "This is a performance, Hastings," Poirot says, his voice low, "and we must draw the director into the light. Let's break this down for you, our viewers. Imagine you're solving a school mystery. Someone's framed your friend for a prank, and now they've been targeted again. You'd set a trap to catch the real culprit, right? That's Poirot's plan. He believes Carlotta impersonated Jane to enter the mansion, possibly hired by Brian to kill Edgware and stop his blackmail. The chloroform attack on Jane suggests the killer fears she knows too much. Poirot decides to use Carlotta's talent against her, staging a scenario to lure the murderer. He arranges a private meeting at the theatre, asking Carlotta to perform her Jane Wilkinson impersonation for a special audience. Debate. A fake rumor spread through Jap's contacts that Carlotta has evidence about the murder and is ready to talk. For you, our audience, this is like setting up a sting in a group chat, leaking a fake secret to see who bites. Poirot and Hastings arrive at the theatre, where the fatal mask is in its final rehearsals. The stage is a whirlwind of costumes and props, but Carlotta stands out. Her Jane impersonation flawless, same walk, same laugh. She agrees to the performance, thinking it's for a producer, but her eyes dart nervously. Poirot watches from the shadows, Jap and Hastings stationed at the exits. As Carlotta takes the stage, mimicking Jane's sultry charm, Poirot scans the audience for familiar faces, Brian, Geraldine, or Ronald. The trap is set, but the killer is cunning, and Poirot knows one wrong move could let them slip away. To make this relatable, think about a time you tested someone's honesty, maybe dropping a hint to see if they'd confess. Poirot's doing the same, using Carlotta's performance to flush out the murderer. Halfway through her act, a figure slips into the theatre. Ronald Marsh, disheveled and jumpy, his eyes fixed on Carlotta. Poirot's heart quickens. Ronald's presence, after days on the run, is no coincidence. Jap moves to intercept, but Poirot signals him to wait. Ronald's theatre ticket stub from the murder night places him in Jane's world, and his debts give him motive. Could he have killed Edgware for the inheritance, used Carlotta to frame Jane, and attacked Jane too? Silence her. Poirot whispers to Hastings, "Observe, mon ami. The fish is in the net." Let's dive into a practical example of Poirot's method. Imagine you're investigating a stolen phone at work. You spread a rumor that you've got security footage, and the thief shows up to check. Ronald's reaction to Carlotta's performance is similar. He's drawn out, his panic palpable. Poirot approaches him after the act, his voice calm but piercing. "Monsieur Marsh, why are you here?" Ronald stammers, claiming he's just a theatre fan, but his hands shake, and a crumpled note falls from his pocket. Poirot snatches each draft of the B-note in the same handwriting as the one in Edgware's study. "Careless, monsieur," Poirot says, his eyes gleaming. Ronald bolts, but Japp's men catch him at the door. Ronald's interrogation is tense. He admits arguing with Edgware about money, but denies murder. "I wrote the note to meet him," he says, "to beg for a loan. But I never went to the mansion." His story crumbles when Poirot mentions the ticket stub. He was at the theatre, not the club, the night of the murder. Ronald confesses he saw Carlotta that night, asking her to impersonate Jane for a prank on Edgware. "I thought it'd scare him into helping me," he says, but she refused. This aligns with Carlotta's story, but Poirot senses Ronald's desperation could have pushed him to kill, especially if he knew about the blackmail papers naming him as a debtor. For you, our viewers, this is like catching a liar red-handed there. Story falls apart under pressure, but Poirot's trap isn't done. Carlotta, shaken by Ronald's appearance, admits to Poirot that she lied about her alibi. She left the theatre briefly to meet Edgware, hoping to pay off his blackmail. She swears she didn't kill him, only spoke to him through the study window. The scratched latch supports her story, but the lipstick smudge could be hers. Poirot's mind races Carlotta's visit, places her at the scene, but the B-note ties to Ronald. Did they work together, or is Brian still the mastermind, using both to frame Jane? Geraldine's absence from the theatre keeps her in play. Her hatred a potent motive. A new clue emerges. Japp finds a chloroform vial in a theatre prop room, hidden among Jane's costumes. It's a direct link to Jane's attack, suggesting the killer has access to the theatre. Poirot suspects Brian, who's been dodging him, but Geraldine's theatre connections can't be ignored. The chapter ends with Poirot and Hastings leaving the theatre, the city's fog curling around them like the mystery itself. Ronald's confession and Carlotta's admission have tightened the net, but the killer's still out there. "We are close, Hastings," Poirot says, his voice steady. But the final act is yet to come. What's next? In Chapter 9, Poirot confronts Brian Martin, uncovering a secret that ties all the suspects together. But a final twist threatens to unravel his case. Will he catch the killer before they strike again? Keep watching to find out. And if you're loving this dive into Poirot's world, give this video a thumbs up, hit subscribe, and drop a comment below with your guesses about Ronald's role. Let's keep unraveling this mystery together. The London night wraps the city in a shroud of fog, its gas lamps flickering like secrets waiting to be uncovered. Inside Hercule Poirot's immaculate flat at Whitehaven Mansions, the air is thick with the weight of a case teetering on the edge of resolution. Lord Edgware's murder stabbed in his locked study has entangled a cast of suspects in a web of lies. Jane Wilkinson, the actress with a shaky alibi. Brian Martin, her evasive lover tied to a B-note. Ronald Marsh, the debt-ridden nephew caught with a matching note. Geraldine, the vengeful daughter. And Carlotta Adams, the impersonator, blackmailed by Edgware. A smudge of lipstick, a scratched window latch, missing blackmail papers, and a chloroform attack on Jane have tightened the noose, but the killer remains elusive. Poirot's trap at the theatre exposed Ronald's lies and Carlotta's secret visit to the mansion. Yet a final piece is missing. Welcome to Chapter 9 of Hercule Poirot's breakthrough in The Sinister Lord Edgware Dies, where Poirot confronts Brian Martin, uncovering a secret that ties all the suspects together, only for a final twist to threaten his case. For you, our YouTube audience, get ready for the curtain to rise on the truth. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's unravel this mystery together. Poirot sits at his desk, his moustache gleaming, his little grey cells weaving together the threads of the case. Captain Hastings, ever the faithful chronicler, watches anxiously as Poirot reviews his notes, the B-note linking Brian and Ronald, Carlotta's blackmail letter, the chloroform vial found in the theatre, and Geraldine's shaky alibi. The attack on Jane, you're next, scrawled in the same handwriting as the B. Note suggests a killer desperate to silence witnesses. Poirot's trap at the theatre confirmed Carlotta's presence at the mansion and Ronald's attempt to use her impersonation skills, but Brian Martin's role remains murky. His connection to Jane, Geraldine, and Carlotta, plus his nervous denials, make him a linchpin. This is a play, Hastings, Poirot says, his voice calm but intense, and Monsieur Martin is at its centre. We must bring him to the stage. Let's set the scene for you, our viewers. Imagine you're piecing together a workplace scandal. Everyone's got a motive, but one person's name keeps popping up in every story. That's Brian Martin for Poirot. He tracks Brian to a dimly lit club in Soho, where the producer is drowning, his nerves in gin. Brian's charm is frayed, his eyes bloodshot as Poirot and Hastings approach. I've got nothing more to say, he snaps, but Poirot's gentle persistence breaks through. Monsieur, the note signed B, it is yours, is it not? Brian's face pales, and after a long pause, he nods. I wrote it to Edgware, he admits, to meet him about Jane's divorce. He was bleeding me dry with threats said. He'd ruin my career if I didn't pay up. This confirms Edgware's blackmail extended to Brian, likely over his financial troubles or a scandal tied to Jane. For you, our audience, this is like catching a co-worker admitting they fudged a report to save their job. It's a breakthrough, but not the whole story. Poirot presses Brian about the murder night. Brian claims he was at the theatre, but his earlier vagueness and the chloroform vial found their raised doubts. Did you ask Mademoiselle Adams to impersonate Lady Edgware? Poirot asks. His eyes locked on Brian's. The producer hesitates, then confesses, I thought about it to trick Edgware into signing divorce papers. But she said no, and I dropped it. Poirot's not convinced Brian's desperation to free Jane could have pushed him to murder, using Carlotta to stage Jane's presence. The B-note could have lured Edgware to his death, and the chloroform attack on Jane might be Brian's attempt to cover his tracks. To make this relatable, think about a time you uncovered a friend's half-truth. They admitted to part of a mess, but left out the big stuff. Poirot's digging for that big stuff. He asks Brian about Geraldine, knowing they spoke about Jane's marriage. Brian admits Geraldine approached him, furious about her father's control over her inheritance. She wanted him gone, Brian says, but I told her to let it go. This ties Geraldine to Brian's orbit, suggesting a possible alliance. Poirot's mind flashes to the lipstick smudge. Could it be Geraldine's, left to frame Jane, or Carlotta's from her visit to the mansion? He decides to revisit Carlotta, suspecting her impersonation is the key to the locked room mystery. Poirot and Hastings return to the theatre, where Carlotta is practicing her Jane Wilkinson act. Her performance is uncanny, but her eyes are wary as Poirot approaches. "Mademoiselle, you visited Lord Edgware," he says, his voice soft but firm. The scratched latch proves it. "Did you kill him?" Carlotta's composure cracks. She admits climbing through the window to beg Edgware to stop the blackmail. "He laughed at me," she says, tears welling. "I left him alive, I swear." But she reveals a bombshell. She saw Geraldine at the mansion earlier that day, arguing with her father. She was screaming about Jane ruining everything, Carlotta says. This places Geraldine at the scene, her hatred for Jane and her father. A potent motive. Let's dive into a practical example for you, our viewers. Imagine you're solving a school mystery. Someone's trashed the library, and a witness saw two people nearby. One confesses to being there, but swears they didn't. Do it, pointing to the other. That's Carlotta's story, implicating Geraldine. The scratched latch supports her claim of entering through the window, but the lipstick smudge could be hers, left accidentally or deliberately. Poirot suspects Geraldine used Carlotta's visit to stage the murder, knowing Alton would mistake her for Jane. But Brian's confession about the blackmail adds another layer. Could he and Geraldine have conspired, using Carlotta as a pawn? Ronaldsby note and theatre ticket stub keep him in the frame, possibly as a partner or a scapegoat. Then comes the final twist. Chief Inspector Japp arrives with news that shakes Poirot's theory. A witnesser made at Jane's hotel saw a woman resembling Carlotta entering Jane's room before the chloroform attack. The maid's description matches Carlotta's build, not Geraldine's, and a lipstick tube found in Jane's room matches one Carlotta owns. Poirot's heart sinks. Carlotta's been playing him, her tears a performance. "Mademoiselle," he says, confronting her, "you attacked Lady Edgware. Why?" Carlotta breaks down, admitting she drugged Jane to stop her from revealing the blackmail to the police. "Edgware was going to expose me," she sobs. "I panicked, but she insists she didn't kill him. Someone else used her presence at the mansion to frame Jane, for you, our audience. This is like catching the main suspect in a lie. They've admitted to one crime but swear they're innocent of the big one." Poirot's mind races. Carlotta's attack on Jane explains the chloroform, but the murder points to Geraldine, whose anger and presence at the mansion fit the timeline. Brian's blackmail and Ronald's debts keep them in play, but the lipstick and theatre voice point to Carlotta's involvement. The chapter ends with Poirot and Hastings leaving the theatre, the fog thicker than ever. "The truth is near, Hastings," Poirot says, his voice resolute. "But we must tread carefully. The killer is watching." What's next? In Chapter 10, Poirot sets a final trap to unmask the killer, weaving together every clue for a dramatic showdown. Will he catch the murderer before they escape justice? Keep watching to find out. And if you're loving this dive into Poirot's world, give this video a thumbs up, hit subscribe, and drop a comment below with your theories about Carlotta's role. Let's keep unraveling this mystery together. The London morning breaks with a pale, hesitant light. The city's fog curling through the streets like the secrets Hercule Poirot is about to unravel. In his pristine flat at Whitehaven Mansions, Poirot sits with a cup of tisane, his moustache immaculate, his little grey cells humming as he nears the climax of the case. Lord Edgware's murder stabbed in his locked study has woven a tapestry of deception, with Jane Wilkinson's chloroform attack adding a deadly twist. Carlotta Adams, the actress who impersonated Jane, confessed to drugging her but denies. The murder, Brian Martin's blackmail and nervous lies, Ronald Marsh's debts and Benoit, Geraldine's hatred, and the butler Alton's theatre voice have all pointed to a carefully staged crime. A smudge of lipstick, a scratched window latch, and missing blackmail papers hold the key. Welcome to Chapter 10 of Hercule Poirot's breakthrough in The Sinister Lord Edgware Dies, the thrilling finale where Poirot sets a final trap to unmask the killer in a dramatic showdown. For you, our YouTube audience, brace for the curtain, hit that like button, subscribe, and let's reveal the truth together. Poirot's desk is a map of the case, sketches of the study, notes on the B-note, Carlotta's blackmail, letter and the chloroform vial. Captain Hastings, his loyal friend, watches anxiously as Poirot pieces together the final puzzle. Carlotta's confession: she drugged Jane to silence her about Edgware's blackmail, explains the hotel attack. But the murder remains unsolved. Geraldine's presence at the mansion, her hatred for Jane and her father, makes her a prime suspect, especially with the theatre voice Alton heard. Brian's B-note and Ronald's matching note suggest a conspiracy, but the lipstick smudge and scratched latch point to Carlotta's visit. This is a symphony, Hastings, Poirot says, his voice steady, and every player has a part. But only one struck the fatal note. Let's break this down for you, our viewers. Imagine you're solving a workplace mystery. Got a motive, but one person's lies tie all the clues together. Poirot's plan is to stage a final act, gathering the suspects at the Edgware mansion to force the killer's hand. He invites Jane, Carlotta, Brian, Geraldine, and Ronald, with Chief Inspector Japp and his men discreetly stationed outside. The trap: Poirot will reveal the blackmail papers' contents, partially recovered from the solicitor claiming they name the killer. It's a bluff, but he knows the murderer will react, betraying themselves. For you, our audience, it's like setting up a group meeting to expose a gossip someone's bound to slip up when the pressure's on. The mansion's drawing room is a stage of tension, its chandeliers casting long shadows. Jane arrives, pale but defiant, insisting she's a victim. Carlotta fidgets, her eyes darting to Brian, who avoids her gaze. Geraldine glares at Jane, her anger barely contained, while Ronald, dishevelled from his time on the run, slumps in a chair. Alton hovers, serving tea with trembling hands. Poirot stands at the centre, his presence commanding. "Mies, Amos," he begins, his voice smooth. "Lord Edgware was killed, not for love or money, but for secrets. His blackmail papers held truths that someone in this room could not bear." He holds up a folder, empty but convincing, watching each face for a telltale sign to make this relatable. Think about confronting a group of friends about a betrayal. One flinch, one glance, can reveal the culprit. Poirot recounts the clues: the locked study, the scratched latch, the lipstick smudge, the B-note. He reveals Carlotta's blackmail: she climbed through the window to beg Edgware, leaving the latch scratched. "But you did not kill him, mademoiselle," he says, and Carlotta exhales, tears falling. He turns to Brian, who's Benoit. "Lured Edgware to the study. You faced his blackmail, monsieur, but you did not strike." Brian nods, shamefaced. Ronald's note, a desperate plea for money, places him at the theatre, not the mansion. Jane's attack, Poirot explains, was Carlotta's panic, not murder. Then Poirot pivots to Geraldine, his eyes piercing. Mademoiselle, you hated your father and Jane. You were at the mansion, seen by Carlotta, arguing with him. Geraldine's face hardens, but she denies nothing. Poirot reveals the final clue, the lipstick smudge, a shade only Geraldine wears, found in her flat. You dressed as Jane, he says, using her coat from the theatre where you performed. You entered the study, knowing Alton would mistake you. You stabbed your father, then fled through the window, scratching the latch to stage an outside. Job, Geraldine laughs, a cold, brittle sound. You can't prove it, she says, but her hands shake. Poirot holds up the folder. The papers name you, Mademoiselle, a debt to your father, a scandal he held over you. For you, our viewers. This is like catching the mastermind in a school. Prank every clue points to one person, and their denial cracks under pressure. Geraldine's composure breaks. He deserved it, she cries. He controlled me, humiliated me, gave everything to Jane. She admits slipping into the study, using her theatre skills to mimic Jane's voice, and stabbing Edgware when he mocked her. The blackmail papers threatened to expose her gambling debts, which he used to keep her under his thumb. She attacked Jane with chloroform, hoping to frame her further, but Carlotta's own attack muddied the plan. Japp's men move in, cuffing Geraldine as she glares at Poirot. Defeated but defiant. Let's dive into a practical example of Poirot's method. Imagine you're solving a theft at work clues. Point to multiple people, but one person's unique pen matches the crime scene. Poirot's lipstick clue is like that, tying Geraldine to the murder. The benotes were red herrings, Brian's to beg Edgware, Ronald's to borrow money. Carlotta's visit and Jane's attack were desperate acts, but Geraldine orchestrated the murder, using her hatred and theatre skills to frame Jane. The locked room was her genius centering as Jane, killing Edgware and escaping through the window to make it seem an outsider's crime. The case closes with Jane shaken but free. Brian and Carlotta facing lesser charges, and Ronald relieved but penniless. Poirot and Hastings return to Whitehaven Mansions, the fog lifting as the truth shines through. The heart is a complex stage, Hastings, Poirot says, sipping his tisane. But Hercule Poirot sees through the masks. For you, our audience. It's a reminder that truth lies in the details, whether solving a mystery or navigating life's dramas. Geraldine's downfall shows how vengeance can blind, but Poirot's clarity triumphs. And that's the end of Hercule Poirot's breakthrough. In The Sinister Lord Edgware Dies. If you loved this journey through deception and deduction, give this video a massive thumbs up, hit subscribe, and ring the bell for more Poirot adventures. Drop a comment below with your favorite moment or what mystery you'd like us to tackle next. Thanks for watching, and let's keep unraveling mysteries together.